Hey guys, welcome back. On the news, let's talk about this disaster that was this bomb cyclone. What's interesting is this was predicted about a week prior to it actually going down. The initial start point of it, a week prior to that, it was predicted. Siberia, it stirred up from there and then started making its way towards us, and everybody in the weather industry was reporting on this thing. And despite that, 50 plus people now reported dead in the United States of America over a winter storm. Yes, historical in nature. Yes, very bad. We're talking 4 feet plus of snow in New York alone. 30 of those casualties died in New York. People were found in 10-foot snowbanks. People were found in their cars dead. And, you know, I posted about this before on my Instagram, and people were like, hey, that's just natural selection. And I want to say that's not what this is, but some of it is. When you die in a snowstorm in your car because you decided to get in your car in the first place and drive around, that's a bad mistake. That's an egregious and bad mistake. Southwest Airlines right now is facing federal government backlash. They're being investigated by the Department of Transportation because 70% of their flights were canceled. 70%. There's still people right now waiting at the airport trying to get out, and they won't get out until January 4th. Some late expectations. I don't understand why you would be at the airport in the first place. That's what I mean about this whole idea of preparation. I love quoting my tweets. That's a new thing that I do. But let me just tell you about what I tweeted the other day. I said, so my Twitter is Mike A. Glover 1. I'm very new to Twitter. Mike A. Glover 1 at that thing. So I said, watching the nightly news, people dying in their vehicles, hundreds of thousands without power, water supply issues in Mississippi, power grid attacks in Washington, and humanitarian crisis on southern border. And being prepared is radical. Look, guys, being prepared is not radical. When you're the victim of a storm predicted a week prior to it going down on every major news outlet, and you decide on your own accord to, I don't know, let me just go over some of the reported deaths. Walk out on a frozen river. Work on a power line and get electrocuted. That the power line guy can't help that, but in the middle of that, that's what happened. Walk out and get struck by a falling limb. That happened. And then obviously die in a vehicle accident. Many of those have happened. Many of the reports that I've seen were guys or gals who died in vehicle accidents or died in their car. I had a news outlet, Newsmax TV, who asked me on the air, why are people dying in their cars? Well, one speculation, as reported in Japan, is the snow is blocking the rear of the vehicle, including the exhaust. The exhaust has nowhere to go, so you die of carbon monoxide poisoning. It would be like starting your vehicle inside of your garage, and except you're cold, and you think that first responders are coming to rescue you. That's the biggest problem here. A lot of what's taking place has to do with me thinking about the complacency the society we live in is facing. I mean, if you don't think we're complacent, man, just open your eyes. When you have it so good that you depend on every single institution to outsource everything that you do, your education, your healthcare, your security, what do you think is going to happen when the infrastructure gets taxed like it is now? I mean, this whole American contingency thing, the reason we started American contingency in the first place is because for the first time, politicians were telling law enforcement officers to not enforce the law. And that's not even a radical idea anymore. And then when law enforcement officers don't do their job, we want to hold them accountable. Look, I want to do the same, but we can't have our cake and eat it too. At least we think we can. So we live in a society that is very fragile, and that's a problem. It's not a problem for me, or likely most of the listeners who listen to this who are prepared, but it's a problem for the families of the lost lives over a weak storm. Not a weak storm, W-E-A-K, but a week-long storm that brought Arctic temperatures from Siberia as far south as Miami Beach, Florida. Now, look, I get it, guys. I mean, people are just going to die. If you study survival, John Leach, a very good survival psychologist, one of the only ones that I've seen, wrote a book about survival and why people live and why people die. And most certainly, every single catastrophe is going to have the bottom of the barrel. But in a society that is so spoiled, why would people die? Well, guys, the infrastructure is prepared to deal with the norm, the baseline. When you have a catastrophe like a hurricane, like Katrina, a tornado, an F5 that rips through a town, that is not normal. And this storm was certainly not normal. Those law enforcement officers and their caprices, and I'm exaggerating, they have cars, likely could not even navigate some of these situations. That's why it's important to insource your preparedness and get it done yourself. As Greg Anderson would say, no one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. All right, so the reports now are 50 plus people have died, and that is expected to go up. It has nowhere to go but up because they're still digging themselves out of snow. New York is, out of all the states, the most grossly affected. It's crazy, man. I even saw the looting that was taking place. It's like disgusting that this type of stuff is happening. So what can you do to be better prepared for the worst case scenario in the snow? Well, you should know this Saturday the 7th and 8th in Heber City and in North Carolina, Aberdeen, Fieldcraft HQ. On the 7th in both locations, we are doing a winter survival course for both locations. That winter survival course should be mandatory. I think it's like $25. Guys, pay the $25, show up, learn from Kevin Estella, learn from our resident survival expert here, and get the training. So, my babies are calling me. A couple questions. Winter survival guide. What to keep in your car during the wintertime? My recommendations, number 1, a spare fuel cell. Your vehicle is a rolling generator. It does very good at keeping you warm and providing the logistical capability of movement and transporting your ass to supplies and supplies to wherever you need them. But if you have that vehicle, and let's just say you got a car, and it's stuck in snow, you should know you can keep yourself warm for an extended period of time. You could actually run your car idle for an extended period of time. But if your exhaust is covered in snow, that will create a backtracking of that carbon monoxide, and you'll die. I mean, depending on the age, depending on the exposure, there's a whole bunch of considerations. Depending on how much snow is covering that exhaust, if it's compacted, that exhaust is going to creep from underneath your vehicle or through the exhaust manifold into your vehicle, and you'll die. I imagine outside of the few that we've seen that have been reported to die from carbon monoxide poison, a lot of those who passed away in their vehicles will have died from carbon monoxide poisoning or hypothermia. Two very bad things to die from. A go bag. You have to have a go bag. The reason a go bag is important is because you have the ability to bug in, to stay in your vehicle and survive with the equipment that's in that bag. But you also have the option to take that bag, put it on your back, and bug out. We have a mobility panel pack that goes on the back of your seat, and the importance of that is ready access to the equipment, but also the ability to detach it, use the backpack straps, and be able to bug out from that situation. Because you might be on a highway, snowed in, or a backcountry road that you're familiar with. You know the route. If you have the right life-saving equipment, which we'll get into, you could take that equipment on your back or in the vehicle and survive. The number one piece of equipment, emergency communications, guys. Both the InReach, the Garmin setup. I have a Garmin that has the InReach capability. InReach is the name of a company, but the capability to SMS or text an emergency text or SOS beacon text via the satellite communication network. Remember, as long as that device has power, you're going to be able to relay that communication because it uses a clear view of the sky. Even in a storm, you can still get that clear view of the sky. Excuse me. Man, wash this down. Good old Basil Hayden. Wash it down with some Fieldcraft water. No big deal. Don't judge me, guys. Don't judge me. Also, emergency communications in a plan is important. I mean, planning is like the overall arching umbrella to all this stuff. That is the number one thing you must have is a plan. So if you have a communications plan, the people you love know to look at their phone if you're away. You might not have any cell phone communication, guys. Cell phone power depends on the infrastructure power attached to the cell phone tower. If you don't have that, you're not going to be able to communicate data, voice, or text over the network. Now, the new cell phone from Apple, the iPhone 14, does have SAT-based capabilities, especially for SOS. It even has a gyroscope. I'm not familiar with the technical terminology here. If you're an expert at it, go ahead and leave your comments below. But it has the ability for you to communicate via the SAT network to be able to let somebody know that you're in distress. It even has the ability to measure forces, like a vehicle rolling upside down a ditch. In fact, there was somebody rescued recently, a man and a woman who were rescued uninjured after they rolled down a ravine into a ditch. So have a plan, but have an emergency communications PACE plan, a primary, an alternate, and a contingency. Next is a bivy sack. Why a bivy sack? It could be if you have the vehicle space, like if you have a trunk, yeah, do a sleeping bag. Do a cold weather sleeping bag. But you must remember that if it's you and your family or you and your friend and you don't have anything else, that's going to be problematic. Have multiple bivy sacks. A bivy sack is smaller and more compact because it's used mainly for emergencies like retaining your core body temperature. So a bivy sack, especially made of mylar or some type of space blanket material, is going to be even smaller. But why not have both the sleeping bag and the bivy sack? Both of them complement each other very well because they further insulate you. The reason that's important is because in the wintertime, you could die from hypothermia faster than most things will kill you. Outside of a traumatic accident, the cold is going to kill you. On top of that, you want a survival kit. All the things like fire, water, procurement of water, purification of water, signal. The basic survival kit is important. But if you have the ability to start a fire, it's one of the reasons I designed this Fieldcraft fire rod. I didn't want a ferro rod that was miniature and minimalist. I wanted the right solution, which is a huge ferro rod where I could strike and ignite a flame in the worst case scenario. Like I'm soaking wet and I need to make a fire really fast. You have a little ferro rod that's the size of a dime and you're trying to strike that in the middle of freezing your ass off, it's not going to fare well. And lastly, the recommendation is maintenance. You got to have maintenance, guys. I would recommend a portable jump starter. I know a lot of people, they're new to that, but they have portable setups that run off of 12 volts, meaning you could charge it with your vehicle or charge it beforehand, and it gives you the ability to start a dead battery in the cold. Now, I had one. My Sprinter van, my four-wheel drive Sprinter van in my driveway during a cold snap died, and that thing's made in Germany. It's meant to get through very brutal cold conditions, and it died on me. I had to use a power pack, a portable jump starter, in order to get it running. Also, in a winter survival guide, what do you do if you're trapped in your car? So let's go through this. I'm not going to talk about the bugging out because that's a consideration, but let's talk about the bugging in. Number one, you got to assess the situation, determine your course of action. That starts with a plan. Plan is paramount. Have a plan and expect that first plan out the gate to fail. So have a contingency plan. Next, think about bugging in and think about immediately insulating your core body temperature. Crawl back in your vehicle, get out of your vehicle, clear the space behind your exhaust if you have fuel, and start conserving fuel. I mean, you could run your heater to keep you warm, but does your heater need to be on full blast? No. Reduce the heater to something that's comfortable. Turn off your lights. Maybe leave your hazards on if hazards are exposed to the outside environment and not covered. And then look at trying to insulate your core body temperature. That is your most precious asset in a survival situation. As soon as you start crashing and getting cold, your brain deteriorates, your decision-making deteriorates, and that's not good. Also, if you have an active account through InReach, through Zoleo, through whatever the SMS service is. When I was a contractor, I used to have a Breitling emergency where you could undo the attachment and string it out. But how good would that have done me when I'm transponding SOS as a frequency, as a signal, with no airplanes flying? Not really good. But if you have a ham radio, you could be calling on ham radio and literally calling out that you're in distress and noting your location so people can come and find you. If you have the InReach capability, you could simply send a grid of your location to emergency services and they'll get to you. And I said they'll get to you because if you transpond and you're in a major disaster, get in line, guys. Get in line. It doesn't mean they won't get to you, but get in line. That's why it is preferred to have the capability in your vehicle, on your person, and at your home to survive 72 plus hours. At a minimum, 72 hours. Have enough food, water, shelter, all the things, communications, to be able to survive 72 hours. Because that's about the length of a catastrophe, about 72 hours in a cycle. Also, stay hydrated. You better start drinking water. It doesn't have a lot to do with like this 3 days and you're dead idea, especially in the cold, but you will go through a lot of water in the cold trying to keep your core body temperature warm naturally. So you need to hydrate. But more significantly, it keeps you in the right state of mind. If your organs are pumping, your brain's pumping oxygen and blood, it's going to allow you to think clearly, and staying hydrated on top of it is important. 3 minutes, you could die from cold weather exposure. 3 days, you could die from lack of water or being dehydrated. And then 3 weeks, forget about it. I mean, if you starve to death in your vehicle in America, you're super rural and you're probably in a very bad circumstance, followed by very bad decisions. All right. Signal distress if able. If you're in an emergency situation, you can't get through with comms. Even if you can get through with comms, you want to make your situation known. Imagine if you're in a white vehicle, a sedan, and you're in the middle of a snowstorm, trapped by snow with a white vehicle. It's going to be hard to locate you. One of the ways you could be located is if you have foliage or greenery, anything, dead branches, anything that you could pile up that can create a smoke signal that will alert to your position via signal. A fire just won't do it. A fire actually lets off very little smoke, period. But if you throw stuff in the fire, especially green foliage, that is going to create a smoke signal so that somebody could see you. In the wintertime, if air assets are able to fly, it's a thermal imagery or imaging capability for you to signal your distress. So that could be spotted miles away with thermal imagery, especially in advanced technology in search and rescue. Also, lastly, have a plan to bug out and displace. We talk about this bugging in. There are a lot of justifications for bugging in and staying in your vehicle, especially in a snowstorm. In the middle of a snowstorm, you don't want to just get out and start walking. If you don't have your exact whereabouts, if you don't know how to navigate in the snow, if you don't have the right clothing, getting out and starting to walk is not going to potentially be advantageous. If you have the ability to do those things, or in an extreme circumstance, you might want to displace. So have the ability to carry all the things I just said in a backpack. Again, selfishly plugging my mobility bag. It's the reason why we designed it, because there's no excuse. You have the panel back on the back of your seat. You have ready access in case of emergency, and you have the ability to dislocate that from your vehicle, zip it up, throw additional crap you need in your bag, and bug out on foot. I hope you hear the pitter-patter of my kids. I love that sound. All right, let's talk about, lastly, $1.7 trillion got approved. Did you approve $1.7 trillion to be approved through federal spending? Well, it just passed the House, including $45 billion for Ukraine. It was 40, but additional $5 billion for NATO. So it all is kind of the same. $700 billion of that is non-defense related, including $40 billion for disaster response. But again, do you know exactly where that money is going? Probably not, because the document submitted for approval is 4,000 pages. I'll say that again, 4,000 pages. Anyways, moving on. Let's talk about EDC. When we talk about on the gear as part of this show, I want to talk about specific gear that relates to EDC, mobility, and also homestead. Let me caveat this. Any companies that pay me for the relationship, I'll tell you. Like, people always go, well, SIG pays you. Yeah, they certainly do. I mean, the Army paid me to carry a Glock for a decade. An American-based manufactured company that now currently has the contract for pistol, carbine, and rifles and optics and everything else is now providing those is SIG. So yeah, they pay me. Like I'm not ashamed to say that. Like yeah, sorry guys, SIG pays me. But I also have contractual agreements where I will never compromise the integrity of my decision or my opinion based on just a company position. You guys should know better. I mean, I carry an HK P7. You think HK pays me? No, they don't pay me. The SIG pays me, but I'll tell you, one of the best carrying pistols is a SIG Macro 365. Is that debatable? A 1-inch wide gun that carries 17 plus 1 rounds. Now, my flat range gun, I've defaulted back to a Glock 17. Why? I'm faster because I carried a Glock my entire military career. And yeah, I like some of the SIGs, some of the platforms. Some of the platforms like the 320, I'm using the Max version, the 320 Max for carry optics and USPSA. They're all great pistols, but I carry a Glock 17 on the flat range. So again, I will let you know the relationship. There's no secrets here. I mean, I don't mask it as a secret. I'm not hiding the relationship here. When it comes to knives, let me caveat this conversation with, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert at knives. There's a whole bunch of knife nerds out there who know a lot more about knives. Josh Smith from Montana Knife Company, knife nerd. Kevin Estella from Fieldcraft Survival, knife nerd. Me, not a knife nerd. Now, I've carried them all my career. Let me show you some of the knives, and let me talk to you about some of my recommendations for things that I carry. One, man, look at this thing. So if you could look at that, that is a Strider MT that I was gifted as a knife that I could never afford while a member of the military. And I got gifted that in 2005 from Strider. They sent it to me. I carried this on my kit for 9 combat rotations, and it has served me well. Now, I've pried open a lot of cans of ammo, as well as crates, but haven't really done anything outside of that. But it did serve as my backup to the backup. My primary, my secondary, and then I had this on the kit in the position where if something happened, like I got tackled by a bad guy, which has happened, I can go to my knife and address the situation based on the proximity of the bad guy. Luckily for my career, some people would brag that they got the knife kill. I've never had to use this knife, but I carried it for a very long time. I'm thankful to Strider for believing in me. I just wrote them a long letter while I did a 9-month rotation in Afghanistan, and they hooked a brother up. Thank you so much for that. What I'll say about knives overall is there's many justifications to carry a lot of different knives depending on the weather, the environment that you're carrying in, and the utility and purpose. This knife, which I used to rave about, I think Colonel Blades, I still rave about it, but they had like some kind of business issue from what I was told. I don't know the details of it. But this one is made by Regiment Blades, and I think this is like a Colonel. And you guys can educate me if you know anything about the difference between Regiment Blades and the Colonel Blade. This one has a patent mark. I'll show you right here so you can see it. There you go. That is a Colonel Blade. And I like, listen, sorry, I'm going to screw this up. This is not a Colonel Blade. Colonel Blades are sold on BCM's website. And I used to work with them by selling their knives wholesale. I used to buy them wholesale until we got all of our social media banned because we were selling a knife. So I stopped selling knives, at least in this form factor, until we started learning how to market them. This knife is made by Regiment Blades. This design and the way that you hold this, oh, look at that. You see my fingernails? My daughter painted my nails. Don't judge me, guys. If you have a daughter, you'll do the same. It's the sacrifices that we make. But this is made to carry EDC, and if you grab it, you can almost pull it like a pistol. I think that was one of the incentives. Like, it's the same draw stroke, and you grab it and you pull it, and you could actually use it as a puncture or a slice. It's super cool EDC knife. The things that scare me about EDC defense knives is, if I carry it, I'm thinking about going to it, and that scares me. The reason knives scare me because I've had friends that were stabbed. Andy Frisella has a really rad story about getting sliced up by a knife. If you take any tactical combat casualty care, which Fieldcraft Survival, both on the East Coast in Aberdeen and Heber City, will host first aid training. If you talk about the puncturing of the chest cavity, oh my Lord, you talking about a world of hurt. If you don't know how to seal a chest wound, to needle decompress a chest wound, to deal with that level of trauma, which doesn't take anything but like this, that's scary. I don't want to be in a knife fight. That's why I carry guns. I'm carrying a self-defense firearm because you pull a knife on me, I'm not going to risk that confrontation, and I will use the appropriate force, which if you pull a knife on me is going to be deadly force. So I'm not the biggest fan of EDC style knives in carry, but I am the hybrid. Now we had a Stroop blade that we just went through in 24 hours. We sold out of them in 24 hours. Chris Stroop, who's a veteran entrepreneur, makes amazing knives. This is a very beautiful knife. I'll show it to you up close. Let me get the angle on it with the lighting. Oh yeah, there you go. Look at all that custom. That's beautiful. But it's kind of a hybrid, right? I don't know what model this is. You might have the model on here. I apologize. If you know the model of this, let me know. But this is made by Stroop Blades. This model is like perfect for EDC. A lot of places that I go, I don't like to carry knives because I don't like stuff on my waistband. I don't like carrying even belts for the most part. That's why I use a fanny pack. Our new fanny pack, the Fieldcraft Survival version of that, is big enough to carry a Glock 19, a SIG 365, a SIG 320. So it's larger in format, but I would carry a blade in there. Now, one of my favorite knives that Fieldcraft's done is the collaboration with Montana Knife Company. Josh Smith of Montana Knife Company, we did this collaboration. This is not that knife. This is one of his cutlery knives. Let me show you this, guys. Ugh. This thing is sharp. This thing will hurt you. Let me show you. That knife's a great knife. But again, not for EDC, unless you're a very large man. But great for cutlery. Man, these knives are hard to get. Thank you so much to Josh Smith. I almost cut my hand just now. Holy crap, that would have been bad. That would have been a gnarly episode. I wouldn't even kept that out. How do you... Okay, let me not mess with... Oh, that's because it's upside down, guys. See, this is why I'm not a knife guy. I apologize. All right, let me put that away. One of my favorite knives from Montana Knife Company, this is the one that I use for hunting, but we did an EDC version of this. Now, that angle, that blade is good for skinning, good for the field. It's got some blood on it from my last hunt. But we did a survival / EDC blade that was in collaboration with Josh Smith and Montana Knife Company and Kevin Estella. We hope to release a new version of that because we sold all the units, like 1,000 units in 1 minute. I apologize. They're in demand. But we will be bringing those back. I hear from the company in February. I think, don't hold me to that. What I hope to do with Josh Smith on the release of my book on June 6th, I hope to release a special edition knife that you can only get from the collaboration that includes a 20 liter, which is our everyday carry bag, first aid, all the good stuff, including the book, and do a special run of that. That is going to be my promise to you. I already talked to my team this morning about it, and hopefully me and Josh Smith can make this happen. That is going to be a limited run of this package that we're putting together, and that will be my gift to you. What I personally carry. So personally, I carry as an EDC folder 2 different knives. A Benchmade carbon or aluminum knife, or Kyle Lamb's new knife. And I don't have it on me because it's upstairs on my EDC tray. Kyle Lamb of Viking Tactics, the Viking Tactics folder has a new knife I'm a big fan of. I like utility knives with serration. I like it to be serrated because I like to gnaw on stuff. Like opening boxes, cutting paracord. That's my big thing. I also, when I'm hunting, carry a Benchmade. I like this knife because it's light. I'll carry this and pack it out. Depending on how many people I'm with, if they don't carry a knife, I throw them this knife if we're doing elk. The last hunt that I did, we used both this knife and the Montana knife for gutting an elk in Wyoming. Big shout out to the guys in Wyoming. It was an amazing hunt. But I'm curious to know what your favorite knives are. Look, if you ever tell me this knife is the end-all be-all solution, I'll tell you you're a liar. I know 5 knife makers, including Dan Winkler, Josh Smith, and the like, Chris Stroop, all these guys that make amazing knives. It's why I have a desk full of knives and I have a box in the back in my kit room full of knives. The reason, I want options. Fortunately for people who are buying knives, they're not like guns. You could select a whole bunch of different variations and that could be the path. This knife company, for example, I carried this for a little while. I like this knife, but it scares the hell out of me because I've literally cut my finger just messing with it. It has a monkey on it. If you know the name of this knife, please let me know. But I like how thick the handle is. And every knife nerd who's listening to me right now is like, that's the Tang or something. I don't know that nomenclature. The coolest thing about this knife is it uses an ulti-clip, which is this friction adapter where you could flip it open. It's very tough to flip open. And you clip this on your belt, and then this locks down, and that thing's not going anywhere. That's perfect for board shorts or pants like I wear that don't have a belt. So just putting that out there. I wanted to go over some options for you on the gear. Let's talk about on the tips, just the tips. Guys, if you're carrying a knife, carry a knife folder in your pants, in your pocket, preferably. That's your utility blade. If you're going to carry an EDC option, that's a different position, whether that's horizontal to your belt line, offset, or inside of your European man satchel, your purse, your fanny pack, your Fieldcraft fanny pack. Keep a EDC blade separate because I want 2 different knives. I want a knife I can get to that's like my EDC go-to. I know where it's at for defense versus the knife that I use for utility. Some guys carry one as a folder, and then that's both defense and utility. The knife experts, I think, will tell you that's not a good rule of thumb. If you're using a knife for defense, you don't want a folder. At least I've heard that. Don't quote me. I'm not the expert. All right, moving on to the book. Every episode of this, I'm going to give you guys feedback on a book I've read or I'm currently reading. One of these books is written by Mike Goran and Jack Lawson. It's called A Failure of Civility. I actually met this guy in Prescott, Arizona, and this book is fascinating because I feel like this is like from, what's the, it starts with a P, I think, like Paragon or Paraglide or Para something, where they had all the books like how to make a suppressor. It's kind of like that kind of stuff. It's not that extreme, but it goes into detail about everything. Number one, which I found very interesting, is the reliance on the government for help. It says, Americans are still self-dependent, but are progressively being lulled into a state of mind of expecting the government to do and to provide everything for them. Even in time of disaster, you can see by the above story in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina what this will lead to. Be self-dependent. Rely only on yourself and neighborhood. And doing that during the disaster, you'll be helping your community and your country to remain strong. It says, the authors believe that you must never, ever, ever give up your firearms. I like this book. I actually like this guy a lot. The crossover of Mike Garand and Jack Lawson, both special operations guys, old school special operations guys, is pretty insane. One of the things he writes is he gives a chart of catastrophic events and gives the event list of probability of the event happening and then probability of the failure of civility. And he has all of these checklists and all this cool stuff. And I don't know if I could be plugging this book, and I don't even know if it's in. I don't know if you can get this. What I'll tell you is my book called Prepared, that drops June 6th, has a lot to do with developing the mindset and the tools necessary to implement preparedness into your life, like a preparedness lifestyle. A lot of people are scared and intimidated of this lifestyle. And I get why, because it makes them insecure when they start talking about all the deficiencies in their life. I mean, if you start just talking about the things that you don't prepare for, that makes you feel vulnerable and insecure. Because, yeah, man, do you have a fire escape plan? No, I don't need that. Why would I ever do that? Oh, relax. Fires actually kill a lot of people in America. Do you tell your daughter not to text and drive? Yeah, of course. Well, 40,000 people die every year in vehicle accidents. So what else are you doing in your lifestyle of preparedness or being prepared? It should be a conversation. It starts that way. I hope Prepared is a book that makes people who are maybe uncomfortable with the idea reading it and going, this isn't crazy. Because I don't think preppers or people like me are crazy. I think we're just normal people who want to be prepared. And I don't think that's a crazy idea, at least in my world. Now, you go to San Francisco, and that's not even a thing, maybe. No offense to San Franciscans. I love you guys. Just be better prepared. Guys, I am going to continue to do these episodes. I've been doing my prep life as an episode, kind of mini doc. But these I want to make semi-timeless. What I mean by that is if you go back, you could reference good information. That's why it's not all about current events. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I like the idea of talking and showing you things. This isn't a podcast, so I'm able to show you tools of the trade. If you have different things that you want me to cover, I don't know, if I'm talking about on the gear, on the tips, on the book, give me your best recommendations.